Welcome friend. Forever I've wanted to convert this TDI to run off straight up vegetable oil, but I've never really had the guts. In this video let's take the plunge and do a 2-tank conversion on it so we can run off carbon neutral vegetable oil. I've got the heated filter here, I've got 2 solenoid valves, and I've got to work out how to fit that, a load of hoses and a heat exchanger in this engine bay. So let's do some brainstorming.
Let me explain how a regular diesel fuel system works and how we're going to change it so that we can burn vegetable oil. Typically, the main diesel tank runs through a fuel filter to the injector pump. Here it's pressurized such that when the injectors do inject it into the cylinder, it's atomized or put into a fine mist. The dark art of achieving a nice mist is something we'll return to, as it's really important for achieving just the right kind of explosion. Any leftover fuel not pumped in and consumed by the engine gets sent back to the tank via the return fuel lines. There might be a few other bits and bobs like check valves to stop the injector pump draining down overnight and a lift pump to pump the fuel out of the tank. Who knows what witchcraft is going on in the very latest vehicles, but in general, for most diesel vehicles, that's the system. Here is the fuel filter. The alternator belt's there, so I don't want to get too close to that, but if we could shift this over that way. From this fuel filter, I believe it comes out of this pipe, which just runs underneath there, coming along here into here to the tandem pump. This bad boy somehow wants to fit in the entry. Okay, it's off. That was easy. So the purpose of this little shenanigans is just working out exactly where the fuel is going and making sure I've got the supply and return lines kind of identified properly. Yes, okay. Right, let's carefully empty that into the jar. We'll still be using the diesel filter post-conversion as it were, but the housing takes up a lot of room and the filter element needed changing anyway. So we've got it out and about to see if we can't rejig it a bit and fit the new veg oil filter alongside it somehow. I don't exactly know how you assess the condition of these filters, but it doesn't look super clean. Okay, let's clean up. That looks good to me. Now the VW hose clamps are quite funky low profile things, but after pipe grip wrestling to the death with a few of them, I can recommend the specialist hose clip pliers. Well, there is an easy way of doing this. You've got to be careful how you get them off. If they've been stuck on a long time, breaking the seal by twisting first is normally a good idea.
There's going to be plenty of scrabbling around under here.
I've got a half idea where I want to mount the auxiliary diesel fuel tank, so let's see if we can't route some hoses from there into the engine bay. That went well. We've revealed this area where the 2 fuel hoses are coming in, and there's space for 2 more here, which is great news. I guess about. Yes. It was worth putting tape over the end of that hose. It might be easier to thread the second one through in the other direction. You can see here there's a cooler in the regular diesel fuel circuit, so we'll have to take that out. I've been threading through the new pipe. You can see where they're going to go now. It's conveniently following this trunking along. And then we're going to come up here and in through this grommet piece that was there anyway for some cabling. So it should be quite convenient really. They just go into there, through that sort of piece there, and then all the way into the engine compartment. And it goes. They're a tight fit in there.
Here we go, first cut. I hope it's in the right place. So I think that'll work. I'll just write on this where it's going. Yay, the tank's arrived. Okay, so let's see what this is like. I think that's going to work. If you're into any kind of performance driving, you wouldn't want the tank up this high really. The underbody ones keep it the centre of mass much better, so for handling that's much better. But as I don't really go fast in the van, I think this will do quite nicely.
Tank connections there and there. Now I'm just going to connect up this last one, which is the external breather hose, so it's just venting the tank to outside. Fits in quite nicely, I reckon. Not for the boy racers, but it's going to be nice, convenient. There's the fuel return, and it goes down near the bottom just to prevent aeration of the water, and then that's the fuel pickup you can see there. This pipe's going to snag on this horrible sharp hose clamp thing, so it'd be much better to be off with that. And now I have these special pliers. I'm all about reusing these super low profile VW hose clamps. In fact, I wanted to purchase some more, but for the life of me I couldn't find them anywhere online. Let me show you what we're attempting here. The main tank is going to become a vegetable oil store, and the small tank we added is now going to be the diesel store. We want to add a heated fuel filter for the vegetable oil. This is a common spin-on filter, albeit one with insulation, that's mounted on a heat exchanger that pulls heat from the cooling system. Indeed, it seems the key to successful motoring on veg oil is to reduce the viscosity enough that it mists nicely at the injectors and passes through the filter without problem. There are ways to chemically reduce the viscosity, but I've chosen to use a heating system. To that end, there's another heat exchanger here before the fuel gets to the injectors. The parts I'm using here are part of the Biotuning conversion kit, and full disclosure, although they didn't sponsor this video, they did give me a bargain basement deal on this kit. From the heat exchanger, the veg oil flows to the supply valve, and this selects whether or not you're running veg oil or diesel. The idea is to start on diesel until the engine's warm, and then to switch over to veg oil, which is now preheated from the engine's coolant. Just like before, we have fuel that needs to be returned to the tank, but we need a way to select which tank it goes to. So to do this, we use another 12 volt solenoid valve. The van I'm converting is a 1.9 TDI Pumpe Duse diesel, so there's some differences, namely that it's unit injectors that it uses, and there's a tandem pump that pumps the fuel into that. In fact, it's the pressure and force of the tandem pump heating the fuel, which is what requires that cooler you saw on the main tank return line earlier. It would be counterproductive to keep that on the main tank, seeing as now it's used for vegetable oil, but we can switch it across to the diesel. Now, I just want to get to the underside of this scrap car of my dad's to see if I can salvage any useful parts, especially I'm looking for a lift pump that I can use on the new diesel fuel tank.
Okay. I think I need to butcher this heat exchanger a little bit just to make it fit a bit nicer.
Just unclip it, they said. It'll be easy to remove, they said.
Not a sausage. Okay. Wasn't quite as controlled as one might hope. I think also gone all over my face.
I'm sure it's possible to do this without taking the whole van apart. Okay. Right. Fans off. Here's the oil filter. underneath that is the oil cooler, and that's what we're unattaching the coolant pipe from now, hopefully, and then we can drain out some of this coolant. Also, I think that's the pipe that we're going to try and intercept. Come on. So I've got a line there, and that's purely for alignment purposes. And I want 2 lines where I want to cut this thing. Use this board.
So in the diagram earlier and the Biotuning instructions, it says to break into the cooling system from the heater core, but here I'm doing it on the way to the oil cooler because it just seemed much more convenient. I think on some cars the flow of coolant to the oil cooler is controlled by the thermostat, and we don't really want that restricting our flow to the heat exchangers.
So I cut out that little section of hose there, fit in the T.
We can verify if it's okay to break into the cooling circuit here just by checking that these hoses heat up at the same rate as the heater core ones.
Now I'm cutting into this bad boy for the return. Now then, I might not snip off any extra because that's going to work just fine.
So just to be clear, we're creating a parallel circuit here that's going to the heat exchangers.
Probably do, but it'd be nicer to have it in just a little bit more. There's the one and there's the other. That's going to shoot over to the filter heat exchanger there. This is the top and the mount, and it's got these banjo fittings that you can adjust depending on where you want your hoses, and I've marked them so I can tighten those down in a moment. And then the heat exchanger itself, the coolant's coming in and out of these pipes. That goes on there, and then you've got this little extension piece here. It slots up, clamps that seal there, and then you can shove something through there and tighten it up once you've decided exactly what angle you want that at. And that just pops on there and spins on. And then the last thing, once all this is together, is to put this nice little bit of insulation on over the top, and that keeps the fuel filter nice and toasty.
After plenty of head scratching and working out hose routing and the like, I'm planning to put the fuel filter down here. The beauty of this location near the bottom is that the filter will spin off easily and any spilt fuel will just go straight on the ground, not all over the engine. After enlarging those to decent 8mm bolt holes, it's then time to finalise the direction of these banjos just by cinching them down onto the copper washers. Then I can add a bit of Loctite to this extension bar before tightening that right down. That'll keep it in place with the heat exchanger, so when I spin the fuel filter, that's what comes off.
The problem I've got is I want to make a U-bend basically with this, but as soon as you get into tight radius, the pipe just folds like that. So I thought I'd try and get around that by shoving some over some copper pipe, and then I'll use my pipe bender on it. And then, okay, forget all that, I'm going to try soldering together these plumbing fittings, and that'll also step me down to a smaller hose, which is what I need to connect to the next heat exchanger anyway. So here we go, soldering. There it is. Not the most amazing. I was a bit heavy-handed with the solder, but I think it'll work. Because I'm impatient and none of my hose clamps fit, I'm having to use this crazy method.
I believe this is known as the clamptite wire method, and you can get a special tool to do it, but one of these turnbuckles can be kind of bodged to work. It's super handy because it works on basically any size of pipe, and all you need to stock is lengths of wire. I'm using copper here just because it's what I had, but I think stainless steel is a good choice. The only real downside to this method is that you need good access. Notice I'm not working here in a cramped engine bay, but I have it out and about and I can manipulate tools around the pipe quite easily. One really nice advantage though is, unlike the standard Jubilee clips, there's no sharp sticky outy bits. I've also heard people claim it gives a more even pressure around the circumference. I don't know how much truth there is to that. So let's plough on. That little U-bend gets connected to the heated filter, and then both a hose for fuel and for coolant is coming up to the final heat exchanger, where fuel gets heated its last little bit before it gets sent into the tandem pump.
Hi.
Both the coolant and the heated veg oil needs to then come across the engine, and for this I'm using some rigid pipe. For the coolant I'm using standard 15mm copper pipe, but for the vegetable oil I'm told that encourages polymerization, which is certainly unwanted, so I'm using stainless steel.
Like cleaning out a musket, this.
Because this is a grubby reclaimed pipe and I'm placing it after the fuel filter, it's super important to clean it out as best I possibly can. These modern unit injectors have such tight tolerances and small holes, just a little bit could really screw them up.
I'm hoping this doesn't immediately leak. Yep, I'm having to take the battery out because I flicked a thing and it pinged across, and now I can't find it and it's back there somewhere, so proceed dismantlage of the engine.
On the plus side, this was kind of necessary for me to get to the wires coming through from the other side.
It's nice and comfortable. So I'm trying to work out where to route the cables through from here into the engine compartment. The switch and the LED indicator to tell you when you've turned it on is all set up. I'm quite pleased with that.
Yes! Yay! Okay, I just fished that through that rubber seal in the bulkhead here, which some other cables come through. It's going from that switch there, down here, back here, through there, under that little bit of insulation round here, up, and maybe you'll get to see.
Well, hey, okay, the airbox, the battery, it's all been reassembled. That gubbin's an area. The supply valve is kind of set for this position here. The electrics comes in nice and easily to that, and the piping's coming across to it, and then it's a very short distance before it reaches the tandem pump, and you want to minimize that distance so the purge is very quick. So it's looking good. Yep, just need to plumb it up, put the electrics in and test it. Yeah, that's quite a tight fit. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that.
So once you've worked out the routing, the wiring's actually relatively simple because the Biotuning kit comes with the switch all wired up. So all you need to do is basically follow the instructions and wire the valves appropriately. I'm using some conduit salvaged from that scrap car you saw earlier.
That looks like it's going to work quite nice. I'll just tape up.
I guess the secret here is to route the cables nice and neatly and away from any moving parts of the engine or heat, anything like that that might degrade their insulation. The valves themselves are designed with quite a nice screw clamp system for the wires that push onto the solenoid body and are held there by one screw.
And that's done.
In with the contacts is an indicator LED that's handy when you're setting these up to make sure you've got things right. And we want to set them up so that they default to diesel if the power fails for some reason.
Okay, I've got this one here set in, so it's just time to do the other one now. Because I want to transfer the current diesel from the main tank to the auxiliary tank that you saw me mounting, I'm going to hook up the common exit of the supply valve to the common entry of the return valve, and that way I'm going to set it so that the tank pump goes and it will just hopefully pump the diesel into the tank, and we'll see how that works, and that'll also prime the filter and everything.
The irony of it being the only one that we didn't fiddle with.
Okay, take two. I've cinched that up a bit and we'll see if that's leaking.
No, that didn't work. Because this is after the fuel filter, it's really important to leave the first thread bare of Teflon tape, or otherwise you risk bits of it coming off and getting stuck in the injectors.
Take 3, Teflon taped, and let's try it again.
Okay, well I can't see any leaks underneath, and the tank is slowly filling. Haven't spotted any other leaks around here. That is working well. Okay, I think it's actually doing the right thing. So I'm going to try sending it back to the other tank.
And we're back. I thought I was recording that, but I obviously wasn't. So you missed some exciting fuel spill aroundage, which I've now cleared up. But we're essentially connected from the solenoid valve here to the tandem pump, and the solenoid valve here to the proper outlet.
Okay, one last check. It's all okay. Cabling's alright. All this is working well. Cooling system, not been any hints of a leak. Filter down there looks good. Solenoid, airbox is all back together. Everything's bolted down. Hi.
Okay, we're running on diesel again. Soon to be changing to vegetable oil. Changing over. So, everything towards me, LED's green. We're now on vegetable oil. Hooray! Great. In this video what went wrong. Over here I'll leave a post-fail diagnosis video / engine changing video. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Let's get this back on the road burning vegetable oil.